Welcome to this episode of Hope Ropes. I am Vanessa Azelis, your host, and I'm here to share another story of hope and transformation with you all. Today, in this episode, I'm joined by the beautiful soul, Karen Virdi, who experienced her own collapse in 2011, which was the catalyst for deep self inner work. And this work transformed her life. It shifted things and ultimately led to her healing. And she now helps others do the same as a life coach focusing on mindset and spirituality. Welcome, Karen. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for this opportunity. I'm so excited, honestly, to share this space with you and help share any inspiration, any wisdom with anybody that can relate and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. And you know what's interesting, maybe we'll let our listeners know.
Yeah.
Karen and I met on social media. We met on Instagram, and this was many years ago, probably close to 7, 8 years ago. I
Yes.
think I was really kind of deep into my own healing journey, and Karen had at that point come out on the other side and was just a beacon of life and light. And she just her energy was just so safe. And I remember actually, she's one of the reasons why I began coaching. You were
Oh,
such an encouragement to me because Karen's been doing this for a
sure.
very long time. And she was one of the people who helped me believe in myself and recognize that it was possible to step into this work. And just things have flowed from there. So maybe you can call her a little bit of a mentor to me in my journey, but so appreciate our connection. And it's been really beautiful to watch to grow together over the past
Yeah.
few years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, when I met you, I have to say this, I just knew you had something so unique, something so genuine and valuable to share through your own experiences that you share so beautifully every day on your
Mm,
social platforms. And it was just me recognizing that and fulfilling the duty to tell you and say,
mm.
yeah, Vanessa, you really need to do this. And the universe has a beautiful way of working through people and guiding them to give certain messages. So
Oh, it's
this
so
is good.
beautiful. So thank
Of
you.
course. Yep.
So let's get to your story because it's a
Sure.
powerful one. I know when I first heard it, I was really inspired, and I hope that those listening will also be inspired. I know they will. And so tell us about your collapse. What led up to it and what happened?
So I think I'll start off with the actual collapse itself. So I, back in 2011, I had started a brand new job at a staffing firm as a recruiting manager. And I had left the banking world, which was a big relief. I have two kids, a son and a daughter, and I just had my son and I was looking to get back to work. And when I was pregnant with my son as well too, I had also gone back to college and I had received my human resources management certification. So this job that I got seemed very aligned from that certification perspective. So I walked in as sort of a volunteer. The owner really liked me and he offered me a permanent position. So I started this job from January to March 2011. I was still in my probationary period when I had my collapse. So that day in March of 2011, Vanessa, I came home and I remember just feeling, so that would be like March 10th. I was feeling just really sick and off. And I just remember, I think it was around like 9 o'clock p.m. I said to my husband, like, I don't feel good. I need to go upstairs and just lie down. So he took care of the kids. And my kids were quite young at the time, about 7 and 2 actually. And I just remember I came upstairs and I went to lie down and I just had this feeling, Vanessa, like I have to throw up. So I just went to the bathroom and I just threw up. I'd go back to bed, throw up. And this happened a lot from like 9 to like the morning. And I didn't think nothing, who am I to make this anything bigger than it needs to be? Right. And I kept on throwing up to a point where I was really drained. My blood pressure had dropped significantly and I was very dehydrated. And I just remember waking up in the morning exhausted and I just heard water, water, water. And I was envisioning like water, cubes of ice, and just ready to go downstairs to grab it and drink it, come back up, shower, rinse my mouth, do everything I had to do to start my normal day. And I remember, Vanessa, when I was going down my stairs, my husband said to me, don't worry about going downstairs. He said, I'll go get the water for you. And I said, no, it's fine. But really, the person that said that it was fine was the person that had a Wonder Woman complex where she felt, I can do this. Even if I'm struggling, I'm going to go down because I got this. I got to go to work. I started a new job. I'm in my probationary period and I don't want my boss to think I'm lying. You start thinking all these things when you're in your survival state. So anyways, I didn't listen to him. I went downstairs. I grabbed the water from my fridge and I remember placing it on my kitchen counter. And I said to myself, why is the room spinning? And nobody was down there. It was just me. And that's the last thing I remember. And at that point, I had already collapsed. I had fallen backwards, I was told, and I had hit my head on my ceramic kitchen tiles. And my husband is already so paranoid about sound. So he came flying downstairs and he said that when he saw me, like I was on my back, and he said I was extremely pale, my teeth were clenched, my eyes were rolled back, and I wasn't responding to him. He was shaking me, he was calling my name. So he probably assumed at that point, well, not probably, I should say, he assumed, okay, this is really bad. And I know nothing of it. I don't believe I crossed over to the other side. I just remember black. That's it. Being in like a space of nothingness. That's it. And then I remember slowly, with the grace of God, regaining consciousness. I couldn't see properly, right, Vanessa, because of the impact to my head, which I do believe it obviously affected my eyesight. But I remember looking to my right and then I could see my husband holding our son and my daughter, and they were together, but I could see their silhouettes, couldn't see their faces and any specific distinct features. At the same time of noticing that and being confused, there was all these different people in my home picking me up, putting me on a bed, the stretcher. And I'm like, where am I? Thinking I'm in a bad dream. And I still couldn't see properly. It was very blurry. And then I just know I was being carried down my stairs out into the ambulance. And as I was laying down in the back, this excruciating pain in the back of my head was so abundant in that moment. And it felt like a 2x4 had been used several times on the back of my head. It's very painful. Never had a head pain like that at all in my life. Didn't still understand what happened to me at this point. I just remember then slowly things kind of coming back to light and sort of putting the pieces together that something happened. And I somehow could piece together that I fell. I don't know how, Vanessa, but I could piece together that that's what happened. I did my CT scan in Emerge. We did their MRIs, all that. And the doctor had said, that was on call that night, that I experienced a concussion from this collapse. And he specifically was narrowing on this area, my left side of the brain. There was blood there. So it hadn't come out. It was sitting on the brain. The word hemorrhaging was used as well. I was really scared. I'm like, what's going to happen? And I was kept for a few days because obviously they had to monitor me to make sure that I wouldn't clot, because if not, I was told there would have to be emergency brain surgery. And I remember when I was sitting in the outpatient area on my bed, my husband was beside me. And I remember, honestly, Vanessa, thinking, I'm 35 and I'm going to die. And the person who said that was somebody in a survival state up until then. But I remember looking up and I remember saying, don't let me go. God, my kids need me. And I have so much still left to do on earth. So in the struggle, in the survival state, in the hypervigilant state, there was a knowing in me that was showing up. But I couldn't connect with that so much. I got a lot of glimpses of it throughout the whole process, but I wasn't sure really what was going on. I was really confused and messy. I was trying to be so strong, Vanessa, and I couldn't sustain that strong energy for very long.
Yeah.
So while I was trying to understand the messiness of everything, and while they took blood work, as I'm sitting there, my husband calls my current employer at the time and says, Karen's had this accident. She's not going to come to work for 3 weeks. We have a note for you, etc. Okay, fine. I was still panicking and nervous because I'm thinking, I need to get back to work. I need a paycheck. I don't want to lose my house. All these really fearful survival thoughts were coming up. It's like I shifted my focus away from my healing. Okay, so that was one piece of it. Then I was taken to get some blood work done. And as I was getting my blood work done, I heard this voice, Vanessa, and it said to me, if they don't find anything in your blood to would have caused this is something from the universe. So I was getting again glimpses of those messages while I was grieving myself in that moment and trying to put the very messy pieces together. And within minutes, the nurse came back and said, Mrs. Virdi, there's nothing we found that was abnormal. So it was like I felt like this higher power, God, universe, source, whatever we want to call it, was really trying to hold me in that moment because I really hit my rock bottom. I thought I had hit it before. This was the rock bottom. for me.
Ye
So I kept holding on to those little golden nuggets while I was trying to make, and from my human side, to make sense of everything. So from there, I was let go. The blood didn't expand or travel anywhere else, but I was told I have to rest a lot. I remember coming home just in pieces, didn't know who to turn to, what to say, what to expect, what to do. I just knew I was depleted at my very core. Every part of me was depleted, Vanessa, every part of me. And as I'm talking to you, I can still feel those moments almost 15 years ago in my body. And so I rested, but I pushed myself, Vanessa,
Mm.
because I was scared not to work, because that's all I had known my identity to be. And I was like, I have to provide, by this stage, I have to have this done. And this concussion cannot let me get in the way. I pushed myself to go back to work. I struggled so much to drive, which was not wise of me because I could have hurt myself or somebody else. But I was so scared and determined. And I went to work and I was grateful they held the position for me. I walked in, I sat down, I broke down and I couldn't even work because I knew I was not somewhere in me, I knew I was not in alignment to do that anymore. And I needed to go home and rest. I just remember crying and leaving. I said to the manager, the owner, I said, I can't be here. I'm sorry. I came home, I called my husband and I told him, I just can't do this. I'm not ready to go back. So I gave myself permission to rest, but I fought against myself because I was so used to, from my nervous system perspective, to work, 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 do, do, do. And to sit and rest felt like I felt guilty.
Mhm, of course. Yeah.
Like, how could I do that? I have 2 young kids. I shouldn't be resting while they're gone to school. Like, I shouldn't be doing that. So I felt like I was pinning myself up against a wall, poking at myself, but then I'd pull myself back down once in a while to breathe. And here's something so fascinating. By continuing to push myself to find work, I would go for interviews while I was still healing. And it went to a point, Vanessa, and this is how you know something higher is working through you, where I got hired on the spot for an opportunity. I signed a contract, and the very next day, I got a call saying, we don't need this position anymore. So again, I was back to ground zero, back at home, trying to put the pieces of my life together. Because I'm thinking, oh, I'm fine now. I'm smiling a little bit more. I have a little bit more energy. I feel happier again. So I'm ready to go back out there. Something was saying, no, you're not. So I kept following through this
Well,
process.
let's pause there for a
Yeah,
moment because
yeah,
that's
of
a good place
course.
to just pause. Take a little bit of a look perspective at what you shared so far. So what you were describing is really years of survival culminating into this pivotal moment where you collapsed
Yes.
and you ended up, in the hospital fearing for your life. And it really shook you, really, really shook you. It made you, kind of question things. You had these inner knowings, this kind of felt sense that something needed to change. And
Yes.
yet there was this part of you that needed it to be like it was. So this part of you that's like, nope, I need to push. I need to get back to work. I need to keep going. I need to prove myself. I need to be the best mom, the best wife, the best
Yes.
worker. And so that was that part of you that again was likely born in survival and really coming in at that point. But then you had this other part of you that was asking for softness, for stillness, for healing, and saying something needs to change. We
Yes.
cannot go at this pace anymore. We
No,
cannot.
no.
And so almost this internal battle in a sense I mean, how hard is it for us to really change our behaviors? It's incredibly difficult. And it doesn't happen overnight, right? You would think something like this would, change you in an instant, like, oh, you just almost died. Yeah, you're now you're gonna be completely different. And it doesn't work like that.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, I mean, it takes time. And I want you to really continue to share your story because I think that's what it was for you, like an evolution, not an overnight shift or transformation, but this really journey that unfolded. So bring us back to you're applying for these jobs, you get this job hired on the spot. God's like, nope, you need time. And now you have this time. Then
Yes.
what happens?
So I have this time, and all I kept feeling was surrender. That word has always been a dominant word that's been floating around my mind and my field: surrender, let go. And it was like a massive test for me, Vanessa, because you don't let go and surrender. You do when you're in
Mm,
survival state, right? So I had to relearn how to be Karen, but a more aware, evolved, less controlling, less fearful, less anxious, less overwhelmed Karen from this experience that brought me down to my knees and
mm,
sort of was my rock bottom. So it was a battle every day. I cried a lot. I was very angry at God in that period because I remember one of the things I said to God was, why do you keep giving me so many hard lessons? And this was me talking from the perspective of having a tough childhood. And why are you not giving me a break? Then I thought, maybe I did something wrong and this is my karma. I'm being
yeah.
punished.
So relatable.
And that became my story for a while. And it created a lot of stress and anxiety in my body, a lot of incoherence, a lot of worst case scenarios. But I'll never forget. And so that happened in 2011. So while I was battling that every day, pushing myself to go to interviews, nothing was lining up. Eventually, I just remember again that word surrender. And it was like, just let it go, let it go. And I remember about 2013, it was just behind me. I'm in my bedroom right now, but just behind me, I have a raised room and there's a long banister looking down on towards my balcony. And I was just standing there looking outside my French doors and just looking at, just what was outside on my street. And this is after I started sort of letting go. I was standing there, Vanessa, and this feeling just like it, if I can explain it through a diagram, it wove like through me like this, spiraled like through me and around me. And it was like this warm, loving, compassionate feeling. And it said to me, you're going to be okay. And I would say that would be the first time after, actually, I think that is the first time now when I really think about my life where I felt some sort of nervous system regulation. I felt some peace. And I remember smiling from ear to ear. And I never smiled like that from my heart as I did in that moment. It's like this safe feeling from somewhere beautiful that was guiding me. And I knew I was going to be okay. And I could let go of the feelings and the thoughts that I'm going to die soon because of this. Because what if something happens to my brain down the road? And I had she wasn't a blood relative. I should say this as well too. This became part of my paranoia as well. She was like a family friend and she had got into a car accident, I think about a year before on the highway, and she had hit her head and she passed away after. So that's what I
Mhm.
kept thinking was going to
Oh,
happen
of
to
course.
me.
So you had that story informing your
Yeah.
experience.
So I was fighting so many different I was trying to manage so many stories and try to figure out which one today or in this moment feels like I can handle it. Which one is coming out and it's bombarding me? And how do I handle this? Because I'm so exhausted, like at a cellular level, exhausted. But that experience that I had, Vanessa, reminded me, even if I had this much of a good feeling, that that would be enough for me to move
Yeah.
forward and understand how to work with this and not create a victim ego from this. Because I don't want to ever be building my life feeling always victim. We do get victimized, but I don't want that ego to control me, right? I
Right.
want to create from it. So
Right.
as I started to let go and let go and let go, and it's like the beginning stages of letting go in my life, more joy started popping up in my life. Then all of a sudden in 2014, I'm starting to meditate. I'm starting to journal. I'm starting to watch what I'm saying. I'm starting to repeat affirmations. Dr. Wayne Dyer's work started popping up. Love his work. Understanding, like I was it's like it was just coming to me. And I was like, oh my God, this feels like it's speaking to me. But that was only for me to capture or I was only able to capture that because I was giving myself permission to let go, which meant I could stop
Yeah.
focusing on certain scenarios and free up my energy and mind.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? That's something that's principle or a theme that we see in a lot of these recovery stories. This, this point, this pivotal point of surrendering and stopping, the fighting, the battling of your whatever it might be, your ego or where or for myself even, right? Stop fighting the symptoms.
Yes.
Stop fighting the experience, stop fighting the emotions, stop fighting the parts of myself. Can I surrender to this moment right here? And also too, even surrendering to a power greater than myself. And for
Exactly.
me, it was surrendering to God as well. So I love that you shared when you surrendered, when you let go of the pressure, the intensity, the expectations, the high stakes, you created space for something new to grow.
Yes.
And this is where your capacity for other things like joy, like meditation or self care or, all of these different resources you brought in, they had the opportunity to flourish because you made space for that. When we're holding on so tightly and trying to control everything, we leave no space for anything else. And
Yes.
this is a perfect example of that, where the choice of surrendering, and surrender looks different for everyone, but,
Yes.
letting go of that need to control and know everything and do everything and be everything,
Yes.
you were able to create space
Yes.
for something new to grow, for yourself to evolve, for true self to emerge.
It's so true. And I'll never
Yeah.
forget in 2014 how from meditating, writing little notes to myself, pep talking myself differently, becoming
Mhm.
more conscious, how much not only joy did I feel, how much liberation I felt, but I felt like I could breathe. And I didn't realize how much I was not breathing properly before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like a whole new world within a world that I've been living through meditation and just focusing on my inner narratives. And I'm like, oh my God, like, how did I think I was even remotely enjoying any part of my life before
Yeah.
this? And how disconnected I was, but somehow I was making it work because my mind knew how to make it work, but my body
You were
was saying,
surviving, right? You were
surviving. Exactly.
surviving. Yeah.
So from there, I felt like I just activated parts of me that were so dormant. And I loved the feeling. And then from there, I just knew, God, I can't go back to where I was before. And I remember saying to my husband, there's no way I could go back to work where I was working before. It is not fulfilling. And there's
Yeah.
three things I had written down in my journal in 2014 prior to me launching my coaching practice. And it was A, I'm staying home and raising my children. That became a no brainer for me after what I went through. And I'm going to find my purpose and I'm going to be fulfilled. Right. And
Love
purpose at
that.
that point, I was still thinking was based on my career, what I'm doing. But obviously, I was in my purpose as a mother, as a wife, a daughter in law, etc. But it just opened up a whole new world. My focus and attention and energy went somewhere else from that experience. I grieved a lot because every February, it felt like my body remembered what was going to happen in March. I gave myself
Good.
permission. I picked up where I left off every time I cried around this, every time I grieved around this, every time I judged myself, even though I felt this bliss, I still judged myself because I started to blame myself and said at some points, like, you should have known better. And then
Yes.
in hindsight, after doing all the work and where I am now, almost 14 years later, there's no way I could have done better, Vanessa. I wasn't in the mental, spiritual, or physical capacity to do better.
Like you
I
you operated from what you knew, right? From
Yes.
the resources you had, from the knowledge you had. You did the best you could with what you had.
100%. And I had to make peace with that because of the high standards I've had for myself and
Mhm.
the judgments that I've had around myself.
Yeah.
So I've been working on making peace with that. And I can happily say I've made peace with all of it. Everything up until now, I'm accepting and have accepted as part of my tapestry of life. This is exactly
Mm.
what I've had to be and go through to be who I am today and to continue to evolve. Right. So as I'm moving through this journey of, wow, this really exists. And wow, there's this inner world that knows so much. Wow, like I can trust myself again. I can feel joy and happiness, and I can be Karen and just be happy without worrying, whose battle do I have to fight now? How do I have to defend myself now? Right? What do I have to suppress to be me? Like almost like that went out the window during that time when I first started evolving back to who I was. And I knew I had to share this work. It just felt like something very divine birthing in me. It felt like my work to do.
Mm.
And I know because the work I've done before felt just like work. It didn't feel like purpose or
Yeah.
fulfillment.
Yeah.
And I knew deep down as a child, I always wanted to do better. there was better out there and I didn't have to live the way that I was told. But that got put aside, obviously, being in my survival state and, being that good daughter. So maybe back up a little, maybe 2014, maybe around the fall. I remember I'm sitting there saying, okay, God, now you've given me this experience. And it was literally like heartbreaking and knee dropping for me. Very scary. One of the scariest things I've experienced. What do you need me to do with this? And immediately I heard, you need to coach people. You need to help people. And I'm sitting at my laptop and I said, okay, it felt right. And this pop up showed up on my laptop and it said about becoming a life coach. And I said, oh my gosh, this feels like it's talking to me. But I'm grateful because through the sort of post recovery up until then, I had made space to recognize that. I wouldn't have recognized it before. It would have passed me.
Mhm.
So as this is talking to me, and I just remember messaging my husband saying, okay, you don't understand this. And you don't need to, but trust me, I know what I need to do. And I
Awesome.
said to myself, the first thing I'm going to do is, he's like, okay, whatever. I'm going to Google a school, a coaching school, and I'm going to get my certification and I'm going to start coaching people how to find, purpose in pain and become empowered. And I'm going to share my story. The first school I see that resonates, I'm opting in. And that's what I did. I
That's
did.
awesome. Wow.
And from there, 2015, I got my certification in 5 months and launched my practice in 2016. But I want to say this, one of many of the greatest gifts, Vanessa, that this collapse gave me was giving me the opportunity to look at my life with a magnifying glass and look at how did I reach that point where I collapsed? What was happening to me, within me, that was that that had to happen to stop me in my tracks. And
Yep.
it was like while I was finding all this bliss and joy, at the same time, a lot of sadness was popping up again, because it was like, my God, I betrayed myself like this, or I didn't set boundaries. I was still healing from childhood stuff. There was a lot of anger in my body from growing up in the home that I did. There was a lot of shame of who I was. There was just a lot of sadness, a lot of grief in my body that I hadn't even given permission to come out because I was scared to look vulnerable. Again, having that Wonder Woman complex. And it helped me slow down. It helped me layer by layer look at my life, see where I could do better, where I wasn't doing the best, and do better from that point. And I was able to see and highlight where all my shadows were. So it gave me, and I took that information. I didn't ignore it this time. I took it and I unpacked it layer by layer by myself and through my faith. And I was able to really rebuild and discover myself again
Mm.
and do the forgiveness work as needed for myself and whomever to find harmony and peace, to become a stronger and more, and when I say stronger, like a more competent version of me, not one that is struggling all the time and barely keeping her head above water. I was able to get those pieces and alchemize them and shift them and retrain my brain, my nervous system little by little and create something beautiful from it. And that was this practice. That was making choices that somebody at my age or stage may not feel they could based on their upbringing or cultural beliefs. But I wanted to follow what felt right to me for the first time. I always did, but now I'm like, no, nobody get in my way. But I was
Yeah.
grateful because I learned a lot about who I was up until my collapse. And that collapse was just a beautiful highlight of that identity or belief system that I had.
Yeah. So
And
this is you're talking about the unpacking, right? Just kind of looking back and seeing because hindsight is 2020. We can always go back and look. And now with this knowledge and awareness, we can see all the ways that we could have done differently, but also recognizing we did the best that we could. So we can look back with compassion and also with the awareness and the revelations that you had, you were able to look back and not from this place of, well, maybe initially from this place of judgment, because we all do it. And we're like, I should have known better. But then from this place of compassion and, like you said, information. What's the information here? And how can I choose differently? Because healing and transformation, isn't just about getting rid of the symptom or the addiction, right? Or the pain or whatever it is. It is about transformation. It is about being different because the reason we got to the place where we ended up was because we weren't walking in alignment with our
Right.
truth, with what God wants for us, with, even at that point, we've been in survival and living from survival, living from our trauma. When I look back at my life, I
Yeah.
realize that, my personality wasn't my personality.
Right.
Maybe some parts of it were, but there was a pocket of time where I, like you said, repressed everything, bypassed everything, was not operating from self, but from a trauma response. And I
Agree.
really believed that that was me, that
Yes.
those were my beliefs,
Yes.
that was who I was. And it takes, something like what we've both been through, right? This complete collapse to reassess
Yes.
and just even imagine, not ever having this collapse. Like, even for myself, I wonder if what happened to me didn't happen. I was just, still coasting, but in survival, what would life look like? Would it be what it is today? I highly doubt it. I know it's not.
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't be living in alignment like I am now. And I think you probably feel the same.
100% I do. 100% I do. I just know that moment where I collapsed was, and I'll always know this and hold this, like it was the greatest gift of my life, the greatest gift, because it reminded me, Vanessa, that I had choice still. It reminded me that things can be different.
Hmm.
And it reminded me that I am more powerful than the things I experience. And so
Yeah.
it tapped me back into that natural part of who we are that we forget because this earth puts you in that very survival state all the time. And I kept nurturing this space within me. And, there's not a day since that happened that I'm not grateful to have followed my dreams, the voice within me, and to create something from that space, from that wounded space. So, to anybody that's going to be listening, if you think you're broken, you think that this is it for you. Nope, not true. There is something so beautiful that can be created that wants to come through for you and for yourself, or for you to share that in a creative way with
Yeah.
others in the world. And I think that that's why I think we have all this pain, is to remind people through our pain, we can create something beautiful if we want to, and that we don't have to commit to a life of constant suffering, which is what I used to think before my collapse.
Yeah. So
And
true.
you just learn so much and remember so much about yourself when you follow this path and you come more into alignment with who you are.
You shared that you stepped into your this job, right? And I love that you said, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew what I didn't want anymore. I
Yeah.
didn't want to go back to that job. That was how it was for me. I said, I know I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'm not going back to the way things were.
Yeah.
And I even had like these general things. I'm like, I want to be able to work from home. I want to have a flexible schedule. I
Yes.
want to be able to drive my kids to school, to pick them up, to cook dinner. I want to be able to do
Yes.
all of these things. And I left it at that. Like
Yes.
I knew that is what I wanted. And through the journey, literally fell into my purpose. And
Yes.
it happened that way, just like you, Karen, because I did this work, because I went in deeper, because I surrendered, allowed, grieved, did all of the things. I built the foundation, and that's when I stepped into that alignment. I was building it all along, and it's wild because as I stepped into this role, I can see how my previous experiences really painted, the way for that and prepared me and primed me for
Yes.
it, you know?
Yes.
So bring us to that place, you've been a successful life coach for many years now. And I think you said you started coaching or you got certified, then you went through this period of more, you know, the layers came up, they surfaced to heal, you met them, and then you stepped into this beautifully successful career as a life coach, as a teacher, as a guide. So kind of, yeah, bring us to maybe what happened after that and where you're at now.
So as I was in this, I'm going to call it my bliss season. It was wonderful because it was like the opposite of what I had been experiencing my whole life. Launching my practice in 2016, always being busy every week, with clients and just flourishing, loving it because it's just so rewarding. Then around 2022, I remember I started to not feel well again. And I
Mm,
was, okay, here we go again. Okay. And I started to notice I wasn't and there's gonna be a lot of golden nuggets in this as well too, tied to what I was saying before. I noticed I wasn't sweating. I was getting puffy. My face looked really puffy. My eyes looked puffy. My energy was dropping. I was itchy. I was getting rashes. And I was like, what is going on with me? But all the work that I had done prior to that was the foundation to help me get through this a lot better. So it's like I just dived in it. I allowed it. My sister was going through the same type of symptoms, and I allowed myself not to be afraid of it initially. I was irritated by it because I was like, okay, again, I got things to do. I got different projects I want to create that I kept feeling coming through, but I couldn't launch them. So I went and got checked, and then I was told that this is happening. So I started cleansing my body. I noticed some fear again, the same type of fear that eventually I got that fear that I had after my collapse because
Mm.
it was something new in my body. And it was like, oh my God, now what?
Yeah.
I thought I already cleared this, after all the healing and forgiving work I did and the self pep talk and all the crying. Like, now what? But deep down in my heart, I knew this is a layers and pieces of still a part of me that needed more attention. And I was very happy I was aware of that so that I could move through it swiftly. As I was working with that, and my sister was working with that as well too. My father, who passed away in 2024, he started getting weaker and weaker. And as I was moving through my own health journey, my sister's health journey, I could see he was getting ready in 2023 to make his transition. And I knew, Vanessa, my body was releasing what was tied to his nervous system.
Mm,
I put the
mhm.
pieces together and it was like a deep knowing that, oh my God, I know why I'm going through this, why this is showing up, because this is related to dad's nervous system, how he was in survival state. I got it more from him than my mom. So again, grabbing that information that came from some beautiful space, I held on to it, kept it in the back of my mind, but I had to do the daily maintenance to take care of him and support my sister and take care of myself and help make his transition easy for him the best I could. And eventually I'd get back to myself. This whole experience with my dad's transition showed me again where my nervous system was still at, what I was still believing, even though I had changed my belief systems a lot since my
Mhm.
collapse, what still needed a clean out. So there was a little bit more inner house cleaning to do. So I was able to work through that and allow the grief of that experience of watching my dad make his transition and coming back to myself, my body, and to do my service. I had to really surrender again. So I was
Mm.
back to kind of what felt like ground zero. But this time it was like, no, it's going to be like I had to be placed where I was, but you're going to be okay, Karen. Just trust God. You have to clear this out. So when you return back to your work, you're going to create new things. You're going to do different things. It's going to be from a different energy, mindset, and nervous system. I felt in many ways, Vanessa, from my dad's transition, I was being elevated and polished again. So the word surrender kept coming up again. And it kept saying to me, let go, trust where you are, trust the big pause. And I feel like I've been in this big pause for about 3 years because my mind says, go, go, go. You got these things to do with work and your business and all these creations. But my body, nervous system, and soul are saying, no, you need to first clean this out. You need to remember how again you got here. What's the wisdom here? So the word surrender showed up again, and I had to show it that I honored it and that I respected it and I was going to work with it again.
Mm.
So
Right.
it was a lot. It was a lot. And I feel like this year I've come back out of this tunnel of grief again. But this time again, the lens is sharper and the nervous system feels much more safer and the identity feels different within.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about grief in general because you experienced, your father. And although the passing wasn't unexpected, there was still this almost the pre grieving started from when you knew. You said, I knew that he was coming to the end of his time here and the grieving began. And it's so interesting that both you and your sister started to experience all of these symptoms in your body
Yes.
almost as this reflection of this. And maybe even I know for myself, my dad was such a pillar of safety for me. I don't know if that was, similar to what you felt with your dad, but I can imagine just even the awareness of losing that safety can
Yes.
then put the nervous system back into a state of survival. And then your body starts to express that state of survival. So then your sister's feeling stuff, her body's talking,
Yeah.
your body's talking. And, you weren't fully incapacitated, meaning you still lived your life with your symptoms. You
Yes.
still, lived, was a mom, you're still a wife, a sister, a daughter. You were still very capable. And we want to highlight this because just because sensations and symptoms might show up to reflect something like this, right? A loss or a trauma or whatever it might be, it doesn't mean it has to completely incapacitate you like it did
Yes.
that first time. So
Yes.
here we're seeing a different Karen. We're seeing that okay, these symptoms are here. Okay, they're annoying. I'm going to support them and
Yeah.
I'm going to support myself as I continue to live my life in these roles. And
Yes.
it sounds like you weaved in a slower pace. You
I did.
made some adjustments in your schedule because your nervous system, the parts of you were asking for change, and you started to grieve. And as we're grieving itself can create so many mind body symptoms, brain fog, chronic pain, trouble sleeping, kind of like a lower state. It can cause intrusive thoughts. It can cause stomach upset and
Yeah.
digestive issues,
Yes.
right? I mean, we see so many immune responses, rashes. Like I've seen it all. I've seen it all. And, that's the body kind of expressing that state of unsafety and that state of survival. So it makes sense that, your second kind of storm kind of correlated with this potential loss of safety with your dad. And I love that you honored and you're like, I'm not going to push. I'm not going to try and get back to where I was at. I'm going to honor this because I know God's growing me through this.
100%.
And, I had to do the same when my father passed away. I mean, like you, I had, I was really growing and my business was flourishing and I had so many ideas that I wanted to jump on all of them. And then this happened and my dad passed away and then I had long COVID and I had no choice but to pause and be
Yeah.
still and allow God to work in me. So as much as I wanted to jump on something new and like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Like I remember saying I'm going to join this training or I'm going to join that or I'm going to launch this.
Yeah.
No, it was this hard no. It was, can
Yeah.
I allow my mind, my body, my spirit the time it needs to process this? Because this is not a simple thing. And I love that you consciously chose to do that and that is a reflection of what you learned from the past. You said, no, there's something here. I know God uses everything and he's going to use this too. And so can I now spend the time I can with my dad? Can
Yes.
I take care of myself?
Yes.
And I help my sister. And then your dad passed away. And again, I'm so, so sorry. I know just how heartbreaking that is. And I know that your grief intensified, and
It did.
maybe you can share with us like what that looked like at that stage for you.
It looked like what you said earlier. It was like my father was the one person for me growing up that I felt the most safest with, the most seen with.
Mm.
He was very warm. He was very encouraging. If we did something wrong as kids, he didn't punish us for it. He just let us be like, okay, okay, it happened. Like he never made us feel like we were stupid, right? And he was never in this like, I'm the father, you're the kid, you listen. He was very gentle and he respected who we were. And him and I, I look like my mom, but my energy is a lot like my dad's in a sense. Like we are very much into wellness, and I miss so much talking to him about wellness. And we had this unspoken bond between us. He never talked a lot, and he looked like a little wizard. He never talked a lot, but when he did, he always had something so powerful and clear to say. And when he made his transition, it felt like the rug was taken under my feet. And it was the same feeling that I felt when I collapsed because
Yeah.
safety was a big issue for me. Now what? Am I going to lose my house at that time? Am I going to lose my kids? Are we going to become homeless because I'm not working because I have this darn concussion that I have to take care of? And then with my dad passing, it was like, who am I now?
Yeah.
And I remember, Vanessa, there was so much grief, not only from my concussion experience that I had not processed that came up through that experience. It was like
Yep.
the funnel that opened it all up.
Yes, yes.
But with my dad's transition again, the grief again was now I'm rebuilding myself now. How do I do that without the energy and the physical who has been a big mentor for me? And
Yeah,
who am I now? And I remember feeling blank 4 months after blank. My hair started falling out. Who am I? And I could literally feel like the neurotransmitters in my brain shifting. And I'm like, oh boy, like this is something different. And it's like I became blah and I shut down and trying to process all this grief because I knew he was going to transition. It was very heavy because it was a lot of maintenance up until then for him that we
yeah.
had to commit to, which is beautiful because God places us exactly where we need to be. But I had to surrender, Vanessa, in that grief again and remember that I'm going to be okay again. I've experienced it 100 million times before, this type of the rug being pulled out under my feet. But now I'm learning something different about myself through my father's transition. So it was a lot of grief. It was a lot of questioning. It was a lot of like, nobody ever talked to me again moments.
Yes.
Um, but again, I observed myself a lot and I allowed myself to look at myself like I was separate from myself in those moments and really understand what was happening so then it didn't become so personal. It became something very fragrant for me. So I was able to, I think the greatest gift grief gives you is remember you the power of love. And it reminds you it's okay. It's okay to feel that grief in your life. I think a lot of people, when they come to you and I through the work that we do, half of their problem is not just the symptoms, but it's the unprocessed grief that they've been carrying and they've been being so strong.
Hmm.
And when they finally are in a space where they feel safe enough to reveal it, their healing starts. And I
Yeah,
think
that's
for
such
me,
a good
over and over
point.
again, that's what's happened. I've healed so much more. I thought I healed so much back in 2014. Now I'm like, oh, it's a different level of healing. This is
That's what I
more,
experienced too. Yeah, I
right?
thought I had reached, that goal or that finish line per se before my dad passed away. I'm like, "Okay, I made it. I'm good. Like,
Yes.
life is good."
Yes.
And then I experienced the traumatic loss of my father and grieving, the process of grieving and being kind of stripping everything away. Like, I was stripped of all safety at that point, and
Yes.
it really brought me down to the rawest version of myself, the most vulnerable
Yes.
version of myself. And I, at first, couldn't grieve. I couldn't sit with the emotion. They were terrifying. And I couldn't accept that my father had passed away. And
Yeah.
obviously, it was sudden. So, nothing could have prepared me for it. But in time, I started to build safety and it started very slowly of like
Yes.
sitting with the emotion, getting
Yes.
to know, myself in this. And over time, what I found and what I teach today is that grieving is healing.
It is.
It completely transforms you. And for me, my faith was strengthened beyond what I could have ever imagined. Like my relationship with God
Yes.
became more intimate and real in
Yes.
grief.
Yes.
And some of the other amazing gifts because, I know so many people are dealing with grief of all sorts. Obviously we can grieve the perfect storms we had and the other losses in our health and all of that. But when we talk about grieving the loss of someone who is dearly loved, we know that the relationship never ends. Grief is not an ending,
No.
it's just a change in how that relationship operates.
Yes.
And I would love for you to share if you have any examples. For me, ever since my dad has passed and it's been 4 years, I still get like signs. I still get dreams with him. It's like I've gotten to know him better. It's
Yes.
in a way, crazy way,
Yeah.
right? Since he's passed.
I agree 100%, Vanessa. 100% with you. I remember feeling the same thing too. And I remember saying to my sister, Anita, I feel like I understand dad's journey a lot more from his physical transition. Like I knew it, but I felt like I actually had space to understand his legacy more and what he really stood for and the choices that he had to make. Like they were just downloading through me. And I feel his presence a lot when he first made his transition. I saw signs, a dime around the house,
The dimes. My
right?
mom has, like, a massive jar of the dimes, and I have the feathers. The feathers is one for me.
Yes, yes. I have some feathers as well too, tiny little ones.
Yes.
And, even Christmas that just passed, my dad would watch us. I'd come over and my sister and I would put up the tree and he'd just sit there and watch us. He loved it. I was sitting on the couch where he usually sits and I looked over to my left. I felt this urge and there was a dime sitting there. And there
Oh,
would be no reason for it to be there because I have two young nephews and you don't want, well, the younger one, we'd be careful. We don't want him to pick it up and put it in his mouth. So I kept that dime. I knew it was from my dad because that was the same seat he sits in and it was just a knowing I had. But I feel
mm,
him a lot around me. And I talk to him every morning because I've got a picture of him down in my hallway when you walk into my home. And what I'm doing every time I feel that grief is I'm remembering to allow myself, which is not something I used to before my collapse because of that complex I had, but I allow myself to feel it, allow myself to talk to my dad, and I remind myself with the grief, I can continue to create something so beautiful for
yes,
myself
yes,
and for people who are struggling in
yeah,
my own unique way because it's
yeah.
grief is an energy. It's a consciousness and you can use that consciousness to create something and keep something alive.
So how has your experience with your father now informed your work and what you're doing? Because I know it sounds like David Kessler talks a lot about making meaning from loss, and making meaning can mean multiple things. I mean, it can be make keeping a person's memory alive. It can be, there's a lot of people who start foundations in the names of their loved ones. There's people who advocate for certain diseases. There's also people who create and are inspired to create from, this connection that they had. So, for me, obviously my dad was a catalyst for all the grief offerings that I have within my membership, and to be basically becoming a grief guide and teaching people about
Yes.
grief. So how has it changed, maybe the way that you work with people or what you do now? Is it weaved into your purpose?
So I think the first thing is it's shifted my nervous system to work in a different way. That's the
Mm,
first part because I can understand and see how my dad worked and how it was necessary because that was what he know that's what he knew to be his truth. So it seemed necessary to work that way. But I learned how not to work in a way that was draining me and
mm,
depleting me. So
yeah.
that's the one big thing coming back to the work that I'm doing and feeling lighter. And also for me personally, really wanting to live, really wanting to make the I've always wanted to make the most of my life, but really remembering the impermanence,
Yeah.
watching my dad transition and some things that may have been left undone that maybe he wanted to, and making sure I fulfill that personally and professionally. And I would love to eventually do something in my father's name because he stood for so many good things and he did
Yeah.
so much good, Vanessa, like your father.
Yeah.
And these are the kind of souls that while we understand that they're just in a different form, but in the physical, we want to continue to keep their legacy alive. This is what I feel because
Yeah.
they have a certain light and vibration that is very soothing and healing and can be very life changing for people. And we just have to know as their seeds how to use that.
Hmm.
But I think for me, the greatest gift again is more personal than professional. It's just helped me relax more
Yeah, I love that. And
and
again,
put different
surrender,
kids.
right?
Yes. And not make choices out of emotions all the time that will only create regret that I wish I did this for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's making me want to live more and expand my horizon and be more deeply grateful than ever for what I already have, how far I've come, and to remember that to keep following what feels right to me and be
Yeah.
okay with that. Give myself that permission.
That's beautiful. It sounds like again, the loss has changed you. We know we talk about like post traumatic growth and how evident it is. We can see it clearly even in your case, how so much has changed.
Yes.
And I love just how you continue to share your story and support others who are on this journey. And, you know, as we wrap up, I'd love to ask one more question of
Sure.
you. Obviously, this podcast is titled Hope Ropes. And I'd love for you to send a message of hope to someone. Maybe it's someone who's just had their collapse and they feel maybe defeated and hopeless like you did. What would you say to them?
There's a lot of things I'd like to say, but I think if I'm going to say one thing is it's my favorite quote of all times by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And it's so important to me that it's on my email signature. And it is simply when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Mhm.
That really helped me during my collapse. It gave me the opportunity to choose a different reality from what I experienced. And this is what I want to remind anybody that is, again, struggling in their own unique way. You have the capacity to change what you're going through, to look at it differently. And that will come from you. You're born with that power to do so. And if you want to, you can create and change your life in such a meaningful, fulfilling way. And that you don't have to feel like you have to suffer so much because of something that happened. And don't try not to let, and I'm saying this because I've done so much work, but try not to let experiences that feel very challenging dictate your capacity or capability in life.
I love that.
And
Well,
that's it.
you heard it from Karen. So, for those of you who are interested in getting to know more about Karen and her journey, you can follow her on her Instagram or at her website, and I'll post those in the show notes. So, thank you so much, Karen, for being here and for this beautiful Hope Rope.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Really, really enjoyed every moment of it with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.